my goal is in strategy, especially in trust building, is to create it such that there's even more money that next generation.
Right.
That's how we should be strategizing, not that there is less, right, or none. If we
Right.
just get the
All right, guys. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Practical Wealth Show. And so today we're going to talk about estate planning, trust, wealth transfers, and creating multi-generational wealth, which is the passion of my guest today, Aimee Griffen, attorney at law. So let me tell you about her firm. She's the life and legacy counselors of the Griffin firm. And so their firm is a business and estate practice firm in Washington, D.C., Prince George's County, and Virginia. And they also serve Massachusetts, New Jersey, and I didn't know you were in Pennsylvania. Okay. And, you know what? It's really her thing is economic empowerment. So we met at a mutual friend of ours. Y'all heard our show with Melinda Emerson, the small biz lady, right? And so we were there and we met there, and I had the pleasure of attending. What was it called, Aimee?
creating a legacy summit.
Yeah, creating a legacy summit. So we're down in DC talking about this for like a day and a half. So it was fascinating. Met a lot of really cool people. So Aimee, without further ado, welcome to the Practical Wealth Show.
Thank you so much for having me, Curtis.
My pleasure. So tell them what I didn't tell them, a little about your background, and then what led up to this actually practice area that you're so passionate about.
So I am committed to economic empowerment because I know that if we don't do something different, we're not going to get something different. I'm
Right.
focused on community wealth building. And so when I went to law school, I was committed to doing something that was economic empowering. And so created an organization that is focused on how do we create, protect, and transfer wealth. I'm an adjunct professor at the Western New England University School of Law. I'm a regular contributor to the Washington Informer newspaper. And so it is how I can provide information and education to transform our communities I'm willing to do.
Okay. And because education, so we got a lot of degrees, we got a lot of education, but what's missing is financial education, financial literacy is really accounting. Like people think it's like investing. It's not investing. It's really accounting. And what I love, like I call what you do and what I kind of put planning around is playing defense, right? I call it defense. You want to make sure like you want to win, but you also have to not lose. Also,
I think it's both offense and defense. Now, again,
Yeah.
sports analogies get me a little confused.
Okay.
Because while we do want to protect our assets so that we don't lose ground, but we also want to move forward. So that's why I feel like it's both defensive.
Oh, it is both, but I always tell people, look, I'm the defensive coordinator, right? Because I'm kind of like the anti-Wall Street financial advisor. So I always tell people, like, I'm the defensive coordinator. Most of my clients, Aimee, are real estate investors, small business owners, and people that want to do that. So what happens is the people that find me tend to know they can make their make more money than Wall Street.
Isn't that offensive then?
That's offense, but I'd say, look, I know the difference, and I understand the offense too.
No, I don't necessarily know the difference.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So offense is making money, building your business, building passive income, learning how to invest in real estate, whatever it does to generate, because financial freedom is the objective, right? So let's talk about, because a lot of people don't begin with the end in mind. Financial freedom is being able to live like you want to live from the income from your personally invested assets. Without a job, if that's what you care to do, or even if you shut your business down, you're still supposed to be rich. And so that's what you're working for. But what could happen? This is what I mean by defense. So what could happen to you while if something happens to you before you build the empire out? How do you, because your family is still supposed to be wealthy, even if you don't see it to the end. And
Right.
so that's to me, like that's what, and I think that we're missing that part of it. That's what I call defense, if that just for clarification. So, and that's why you're here. So we're going to talk about the playing defense, because you got to build wealth, and then you want to, what it says in the Bible, wise men leaves a heritage to children's children's children. So what we want to do is kind of facilitate doing that. And give me a thought on that. And then I want to go tactical, wills, trust. What are some of the tools that you or maybe that's, if I should start with something else, maybe we'll start there. So I'm not sure where to I'm going to
So
let you
it is. There are so many different ways that I think about the conversation we just started.
Yeah.
It is not just, yes, we do need to begin with the end in mind, but then we also need to be thoughtful about the transformation, that each end is a new beginning.
Yeah.
Right. And so how those things work collectively.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how I struggle with being having it as a linear, but more of a cycle, circular kind of experience.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Because it's how I end is my start for my grandchildren in many ways.
Right. Okay. How do you, so what comes first, the chicken or the egg? So, and what I mean by that is, so a lot of times I will talk about, or initially people are talking about, well, you need a will, you need a healthcare directive, and you need a power of attorney. And now there's a lot of language out there around trust. And I've heard stuff, well, you don't need a will, you just need a trust. And I really like to clarify that. I get a lot of, and I try to stay in my lane. So that's why I brought you here. Right?
I appreciate that. So now when we are, actually, now I'm clinging to your sports analogy of the defensive approach is the foundational stuff. The foundational stuff, that's the basics that everybody should have at the age of 18, is the power of attorney for financial, the healthcare stuff, and the last will and testament. Those are the three things that we should have as a defense. It doesn't necessarily move you forward, but it protects you from going backwards potentially.
Okay.
Right.
So you don't not need that. So I've heard people say you don't need that, you just need this. So the
reason why you definitely need those three things it helps identify if you're incapacitated, who's going to manage your stuff. There's nothing that's like, no matter what happens, if I can't speak, the gas company ain't going to speak to anybody else, even my husband on my behalf, if my name is on it.
Right.
Right. So yeah, you do need that, even if no matter what, because you have legal rights to privacy. And so in order to give somebody the authority to speak for you about your finances or your health, you need to give that permission away legally.
So break that down, break those three things down a little more granularly, so that because we're assuming people know what they are. So let's talk to me.
Again, foundationally, the three things: the power of attorney. The power of attorney gives somebody capacity to act on your behalf for financial and business matters. Right. And it is like, so it can be as broad or as specific as you choose it to be. And it can be time limited, or it can be in general. The key that's important, and it can be like from the moment that you sign it, or only if I am incapacitated can you act on my behalf. Right. So I'm the principal, and the person acting on my behalf is the agent.
Okay.
Right? And so, and I always say you need to have a backup, because you don't know if your agent is going to be there able when you need them to be, because they can be incapacitated.
Right.
Right. Okay. So identifying that person who can act on your behalf for financial matters, and that document can be valid until you pass away or until you change it. Right. Okay. You have that authority to change it. It's not written in granite, because sometimes you realize that person is not the right person and you make the change. Right.
Right.
Like you could have your spouse, and then your spouse don't stay your spouse, and then you unspouse, right? Right. So then the second piece again is the healthcare proxy, right? Well, even let me be clear, because sometimes your spouse is still your spouse, but they're not the one you want to manage your finances, right?
Yes. Okay. Yep. Because they're not good at it, and you need to like think through that. That's where the planning comes in. That it's not just one thing you set up. It's ongoing. You should look at every year or two.
Comprehensive.
Yeah, comprehensive. That's why I like the circle aspect. It's comprehensive. It's not linear. I like that.
That's right. The second part being the healthcare decisions. Now,
Mhm.
again, is it, who speaks for you when you can't speak for yourself? The advance directive tells them what you want them to say, because just because you can speak for me doesn't mean I want you to impose your decisions on my care,
Okay.
right?
Mhm.
And so we've seen, lots of lawsuits around, the different opinions of what should be the next steps. Would I want to be on a ventilator? Would I want to have, uh, would I want to have someone be on a ventilator? Do I want to be on nutrition and hydration? All of those things get to be factored into, but it's my decision. There are some states that have a right to die states. All of those things need to be factored. What does that look like? And I encourage people to write that out, because especially I have had siblings who say, I'm never speaking to my brother again because he killed my mama, withdrawing life-sustaining treatment, right? And so if we can identify what that looks like and what we want, that's helpful so that we can provide peace in a family, right? And so, as well as we
We
want
need
someone.
that. I see a lot of that, and all right, come on. So I want to break it down. Like, I want y'all to hear us.
Right.
Okay.
And then also, sometimes there's medical malpractice. We want to know who we want to identify, to look at our records when we're not here, to make sure that, okay, no, someone's going to be held accountable for this med mal.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's the HIPAA waiver, right?
Okay.
Because you're not even allowed to have conversations with healthcare providers if there's no permission, right?
Okay. Yep.
And so that's why the healthcare packet is significant, right? Right. And
talk about that so you just made me think of something. So because I've experienced this with our kids once they go to college. This is why you say start at 18.
that's
Break
exactly.
that down, because most people don't know anything about what you just said there.
So a lot of times we think that, as long as we're paying our kids' bills, or do we have access to their information? I tell all of my parents, when their kids go to college, get the power of attorney, get the for financial as well as healthcare decisions, right?
Mm-hmm.
As well as the addition thing for college is a FERPA waiver. That's a Family Education Right to Privacy Act, right? Now, that means all of the school records you want to have access to as well. And I remember being thoughtful about when there was years ago in 2007, my son was about to go to college, and there was the Virginia Tech shootings, and the young man was troubled, but they didn't have permission to talk to his parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I always encourage kids to parents, as long as you are paying, that you make sure you have access to that information, right? Because I know that my children and me as well, I needed the guidance and support at 18. My baby girl was in a car accident when she was in college, and they weren't supposed to give me the health information when I called. And because we didn't have that in place, that's how I learned the hard way, that 18 is when we should have all of our those waivers in place, right? So knowing who, what, where, when, and how.
That's so y'all have kids in college now. You have or rising senior that's about to graduate. They need to get with somebody to help them get this situated. Nobody's thinking about that stuff. I've never heard that. That's a big little thing, that you hope you never need, but that's a big deal.
Well, it's so funny because I'm out in the community a lot of times giving presentations, and a lot of times churches and community organizations relegate this conversation to seniors, as if seniors are the only people who die, right? Or get sick. And so if indeed that were the case, that'd be easy, but that's not the reality. And unfortunately, we don't have a time or a place. And so we need to have those things in place to facilitate making sure the education is there, that the support is there, that we're able to do, what's necessary to in support of our loved ones. Right. And when I say our loved ones, it's really important because sometimes it's not a biological or legal relationship. Right.
It's another important distinction. Yeah. And wow, you dropped so many gems there. I'm just going to let that sink in, guys. You ought to go back, listen to this again, and get a notepad out. And so finally on the first part of the 3-part thing, the will.
The last will and testament is, I always think that this is a part that is challenging because there's so much mixed information on TV, right?
Mm-hmm.
On TV, they have the lawyer's office where there's the reading of the will. And people think that, oh, that's all I need to do is have a lawyer read this will to me. And then I can get whatever it says I get or do whatever it says I do. Now, that's not even a thing. My reading and your reading is no different. There are some times when people ask me to explain a legal concept that's contained in the will, but really the will directs the probate court process, right?
Okay.
Everything is overseen by the court. And until the judge signs an order giving permission for even the will to be accepted, it means nothing and does nothing.
Okay. What? Go ahead. Because I have another question.
So the court directs probate. Probate is the transfer of any asset that is solely in your name to the next person. So if the asset is like, say, a bank account, then how does that bank account get transferred into my name, or the assets come out? So it's fine if there is a payable on death designation. However, if it's just a bank account in my name or a car that's in my name, we need the court system to authorize the transfer out of the name of the person who passed away to whomever you want it to go to.
Even if you have a will, that's what the will is facilitating.
The will makes sure that it's not the court's, not the state's decision on who gets what.
Got it. Okay.
Right? But so, because if you don't have a will, the state has a formula that determines who gets what, where, when, and how.
Right. And so that's called dying intestate, without a will.
Exactly.
And then the state decides, and it may not go where you want to go. So the will is kind of your playbook to say, here's what I want to happen.
Exactly. I want to do this irrespective of what the state formula is applied. It's what I want to have happen. And so, but I say that with one caveat, that if you have a spouse, your spouse can go for the elective share, right? So if you file the will and said, okay, my husband gets $1, my husband can say, oh, no. I want the elective share, which is the intestate share, as you just identified. Unless you live in the state of Georgia, you cannot disinherit your spouse. Your spouse can choose not to have the elected share, but alternatively, your spouse can choose to. And that's why I say sometimes it's interesting, because we get divorced without getting divorced, and so your spouse may show up at the funeral with, okay, I'm ready for my intestate share.
This is different. I had a friend of mine pass away, and it was the ex-wife, the second ex-wife, and then the as we say in Philly, the side John, who had like a 15-year-old son. I was like, wow, this is interesting. And looked just like him too. I was like, boy. All right, so it's messy. And I don't even know what happened, I don't even know. And I think, because I put an insurance on, because y'all know I do insurance, and I think he did let it lapse, because I ain't take a death claim, which pisses me off beyond description, and it became uninsurable, so I couldn't do it after the fact. He got ill, and then he becomes uninsurable. So would you say, I've said this, so I want you to correct me if I'm saying something wrong. So I said, look, your basic estate plan is the three things you talked about and life insurance, if nothing else, because the life insurance funds all the stuff that you want to have happen.
Right. So I think that the question is defining what is basic.
Okay.
Right.
Oh, okay. All right.
Right. Because if I have a 7-year-old child and a spouse and a co-parent that is not necessarily in play in the right way, then there's more. A standby guardianship designation would be a significant piece that I think is basic if you have a minor child. I would also suggest that if you have a minor child, that you create a trust, because you want to make sure that child gets that money because especially depending on your jurisdiction, like in Philly, there's a whole lot of oversight that keeps our children from having access to the resources that are available to them because of the inheritance. Especially if you have life insurance, there's a bevy of money that you want to go to your child. No, you want it to go for the benefit of your child.
Yes.
An 18-year-old receiving all of that is not wise.
Right. That's so you kind of take me where I want to go next, because I do that, right? And I'll ask parents, I'll say, listen, if you were because there's two things. If they're young, and because I have to stop parents, they want to make their kids a beneficiary and they're 8, but they don't have a trust. And I was like, I used to do in trust for to somebody, but is that person responsible? I want it more official. This is kind of where we're having this, because I want to make sure that it's set up right. And so what'll happen is the money's tied up till they reach the age of majority, right? And then I said, look, but let's say they were 18 or 20. Would you want them to get $1 million, $2 million with no instruction and no restrictions? I don't think you want to do that. So if that's the case, now what are the things we need to do to make sure? Because that's the kind of stuff that I'm running into that I want people to hear. And there's different levels of trust. So I kind of want to set, the segue into, I guess that's a segue into the trust discussion, but the guardianship is part of that also. I may not understand the distinction. So
when we watch, for those people who watch reality TV shows on lottery winners, right? What we know is lottery winners are far more apt to file bankruptcy, right? Yep. And inheritance is a lot like a lottery winning. You just all of a sudden have this huge bunch of money you didn't earn. And so do we want to set up our loved one to be in that position? Now, as we started earlier, I focus on multi-generational wealth building, right? So if I'm going to give somebody all of their money, we know that all of that money may not be there for the next generation.
Right.
Right. What my goal is in strategy, especially in trust building, is to create it such that there's even more money that next generation.
Right.
That's how we should be strategizing. Not that there is less, right, or none. If we just give them a check, right? But if we create it in such a way that there is more money for the next generation, and the more money after that, we're building a dynasty.
Exactly. So see, begin with the end in mind. So that's what we're. And when I talk to people, when we work people, and so this has helped me fill in this piece. I have, but our objective is, we call it the 4 pillars of financial security: freedom from debt to others, which we teach how to be the bank. So we say, like, be a customer of the bank, or you can be the bank. Ready cash, you need it. Most people are too illiquid. I want them to have passive or asset-based income they don't have to work for and they can't outlive. And then my 4th pillar is a legacy of wealth and wisdom, okay, to go along with wealth. Because you don't have the wisdom. I've had people get death claims, get $800,000 and spent the money in 3.5 years. $500,000 gone in 2 years. So fooling their money are soon parted. And so I want to talk about how do we keep that and then keep it going? Because we always talk about the story of the Rockefellers versus the Vanderbilts. And so we want y'all to be the Rockefellers or the Rothschilds at whatever your level is. You want to keep it. When I was at your conference, it was like the houses in Florida with that guy I was talking about, and the farm, the black farms, and and I remember thinking, man, most of this could be solved with insurance and a little bit of basic financial literacy, and we don't have that. But I want you to so I heard a couple of specific things there I want to talk about is the guardian, and then what is a trust? What's the, because there's different types, and then how do we kind of tease that out? Because people call me up, I want a trust, I want a family trust, I want to put my life insurance in a trust, and they've heard pieces of stuff on IG, right? And and you probably need one, but it's a plan. It's not just okay, I want to get this set up, and there's an order to this stuff, and I want people to hear that.
So I really want people to think of it in the concept, right? There are tons of kinds of trust, but I also want you to learn. A lot of times lately, I've been hearing people come who are saying, "Oh, let's do a business trust," and they're not lawyers. Now, I don't know if I'm just protective because I know that that's the practice of the law. An unauthorized practice of law. We have these people who are not lawyers who are making these things, and then when I get them, they're not solidly written or legally secure. I'm just parking that. So if someone comes to you to say, okay, set up all these trusts, ask if they are a lawyer. All right.
Come on now, because I've seen that, and I'm
right.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right. And now there are two categories of trust: revocable trust and an irrevocable trust. When I think about the revocable trust, it's a legacy building trust. Now, both of the categories of trust are they avoid probate, and they are private as opposed to public documents, which a will is public. But a trust is a private document. It's in essence a private contract for multiple generations conceptually.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And so when we think about the legacy building trust, it is I'm setting up a set of rules for multiple generations, being thoughtful about how do I want the assets in my trust to be distributed over time.
Mm-hmm.
Now, during my lifetime, it's a revocable trust and uses my social security number as an identifier.
Okay.
It's an extension of me. And if you think of it like a business, it's like a sole proprietorship. Right? And so, like a sole proprietorship, any sole proprietorship or partnership that's based on humanity, when it dies, the person dies, it dies. In a revocable trust experience, when it dies, it becomes an irrevocable trust.
Oh,
Right?
At death, it's a revocable trust automatically becomes an irrevocable trust. So it's kind of like, let me say it my way so I can make sure I'm understanding it. So like when people have a business, they have a sole proprietorship. When you die, your accounts are frozen, everything's closed. But if you were, and because my father got sick, we had a C corp, we had a corporation. So the corporation is a clone of you. So the business keeps going. I could sell the corporation, the bank accounts stay open. You can keep doing business, and that's what a trust does from a estate.
Exactly.
Situation.
It converts.
Okay.
So now, because then you need the EIN once the person passes away, right? And that trust is now an irrevocable trust. And when it's irrevocable, you can change all sorts of, anything that you said any other day, right? But when I pass away, the rules that I have in place stay in place.
Okay.
Right. The rules that I say that you get this money for down payment of the house is one thing, but you can't, once I die, change that to say that the money that is for down payment of the house when you get for graduating from college, you can use a Tesla for. You can't do that. You can't change that up because once I'm dead, those rules are written in granite.
How do you help people think through? Because that seems like work. All right. I have a mentor of mine that, for example, he has a trust and he's big insurance trainer. Right. And he says he's got it so that when he passed away, his kids, he'll match whatever they make. Right. So like if let's say they want to be a missionary or a social worker, they're not going to make a lot of money. So only make 60 grand a year. Then he will match that 60,000 so they can get a house and have a good life. But he's not just going to, give them millions and millions of dollars, which I thought was brilliant. And
so we give them what they need to do to achieve, but we give them enough that they need to achieve, but we don't give them too much so they don't have to do anything.
How to think through that? How do we help people? How should let's say I'm preparing them for you, or how do you help them think through that? Because it's executing the documents, but it's those rules you want to put in there.
So what happens is when we work with someone, which is why it's great to work with a professional, is we talk about what their values are, right? Because that's what the foundation is, what their values are. Because, there may be folks who want their children to do what we categorize as noble work. Right. But we don't want them to suffer because they're doing noble work. And so we create for them a standard of, okay, like in many cases, he says matches. We say often a multiplier of the median income, that sort of thing. We're able to establish. But again, it's focused on their values. There are some folks who are creatives, right? And there isn't always money for the creative. And then we can build in other, like we'll say, okay, you can paint for this time, but you also have to give back. So we can make conditions on what is, because we want them to sort of fulfill their creative juices as well. Right. But again, that's why it's important to talk about what the values are, what you're really committed to supporting and incentivizing. Right. Because what we know as adults, you can do anything you want to do. But the reality is, to be eligible for my stuff, you get to do what I want you to do too.
Right. Right. So let's say this is stuff I see. So let's say I have on the insurance side of what we do, I'll get somebody like $2 million worth. Let's say they're 40, kids are 10, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I put $2 million worth of insurance. So one of the things you said there is they need a guardian,
Right.
and
So
a revocable trust. And I don't understand the distinction of what you said.
okay, so when I was when I got divorced and my kids were minors, 2 and 5,
Mm-hmm.
and my husband lived in another country. He moved to another country. Right now, if I died while the kids were still minors, they would unfortunately have to go live with him. Right, their biological parent, unless they relinquished, but there's no way that I can say he isn't a good father.
Right.
However, I don't have to give him my money to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. I can say that my money stays in trust for my children, that it can be, and I can identify a conservator
Mm-hmm.
or the trustee for my trust that can support my kids. Right.
Yep. Do you ever make that a entity, like a company or a person? Like, I've seen, one time I was at a conference and I saw this company that will like be the trustee.
Oh yeah, they're professional trustees.
Yeah.
They're absolutely. And so, but there's also a consideration, right? So it depends. Like sometimes, especially if there's a large amount of money that the family isn't used to managing, that could be overwhelming. And so therefore it's appropriate to have a professional trustee. Or when you have a situation where that there would create significant conflict in the family.
Yeah.
Identifying that trustee. However, why I would like to recommend in that case that we have co-trustees. We want someone who knows and loves the family members.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Because just having the Bank of America serve, they're not going to do those things that necessarily impact the lives in a way that they understand. They don't know them. They don't understand. They don't appreciate our core values.
That's interesting. Yeah, I like that. I have a friend of mine. He's got a great book called Investments Don't Hug. And he talks about death claims, but one of the things in the trust, he put provisions so that I think it was like a siblings that were taking care of the kids, that he gave them money to take like a week off or, go on vacation, he provided for them as a thank you for raising their kids and giving them like a holiday. Okay. But providing the money for it. I thought that was brilliant. Of that kind. I don't know how you would do that, but I think like the thought process that somebody's got to work with somebody like you to really do this and review it every couple of years to make sure it's ongoing. It seems like.
Right. One of the things, we do things like we create what we've called the village of support around minor children. That's one of the things that's important to us. And one of the things that we encourage is that there's a planiversary, that every year, not every 3 or 5 years, but every year there's a touch base. Because part of that is, I don't know if it's because I've grown older and time just flies by too quickly.
Yeah.
And so you lose track of it. And so 3, 5, 10 years, I've had too many people come to me with 15-year-old documents that they've not reviewed. Right. Yeah. We know that it's not still current or relevant in a way that makes the most sense. Right.
So would you say, and then I want you to talk about your practice and who should be talking to you, calling you, and that type of thing. But would you say it's not just, I want to tie a bow in this, it's not will or trust, is both?
So even when we have a trust, we have a will, right? And let me share with you that the goal of that will is to never see the light of day, right? Because the will directs probate. However, there are often times when there is an asset that is not coupled with the trust, right? Be it that something came in the mail, something like a check. We have had many times when a check came in the mail after the death. We don't want to give back no check, right? Let's be really clear. But we want to know that can be probated. The key is, again, we mentioned a probate is a public document. Anybody anywhere can see it. But a pour over will that says everything pours over into the trust does not give away the privacy element, right? It still doesn't say who the beneficiaries are. It does identify who your children are, but it doesn't go say who gets what. It says it pours over into the trust and the rules of the trust apply, right? Like, for example, Chadwick Boseman had a trust without a will. Right.
Okay.
And then it turns out there was like $1 million worth of assets that were outside of the trust and therefore needed to be probated and was a challenge. Right.
It was interesting about that. He knew he was sick for a long time.
But he thought but see, part of this is I blame the attorney. I shouldn't say that. We never know what the conversation was. But he had a trust. And so that was what was I'm sure he thought.
He felt I had in place because I have a trust. Yeah.
Right. Contrary to Prince or Aretha Franklin, who decided I know financial advisor who said, Amy, I can show you the letter where I recommended that he get an estate plan. And Aretha Franklin, who knew that she should have had one, but decided to write it herself, right? Again and again and again, right? So what we know is we can make the plans. We can strategically plan. However, if indeed we don't create something with a professional, we don't know what we're doing, right?
Right.
And then reviewing it regularly.
Professional's not what's that LegalZoom, okay, or going to Staples and getting
or prepaid legal.
right. And that's funny.
And so it's a matter of truly having someone who's invested in you. If it's investing in yourself, right?
I just thought about something. So I'll be remiss if I don't bring this up. So I have most of my clients are real estate investors and small business owners with kids, or they have legacy, obviously. Asset protection. I know that's a different. Can you speak? I know we need to get you back, but that's a lot of layers there. But I want to at least put a conversation starter out there about that.
So remember earlier we talked a bit about the revocable trust and the irrevocable trust.
Yes.
And I said the revocable trust initially is that legacy builder, and the irrevocable is an asset protection. An asset protection the same way that we can create corporations and limited liability companies. And so we know that separates it from our personal assets. But we have to be thoughtful about it as well. One of the things that too often, we create businesses through LegalZoom that don't really have a strategy for succession planning, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's a big piece. Anybody who's a business owner should have a succession plan in that, because otherwise you end up having your business go through probate, right? And a lot of that is lost. If we, again, beginning with the end in mind, understanding even what the entity is like, how the entity selection impacts the transfer of wealth in that. And so I encourage people to be thoughtful about that. Now I say my entry into this field was because of a business owner who didn't have a plan, right? Okay. And so knowing that we had been working on the entrepreneurship side, and then when he passed away and his business was lost, all of that was a mel of a hess. So I encourage people to be thoughtful about how do we create that wealth for multiple generations. Like, one of the things that I encourage people to do is family limited liability companies in many ways. Right, that flick can create an opportunity for that multi-generational wealth building, right, and contain it within the family and minimize taxes as well.
Is that that's a legal thing? They need you to set that up. Is it legal in accounting, or is it both?
It is legal. So this is one of the other things that I encourage people to have. Yeah. Now, high net worth people have all this stuff automatically. A family office. Now, we can create that independently. Every business owner should have an accountant, a financial advisor, an estate planning attorney, right? And an insurance professional, all of those things. And they should talk to each other to create that conversation that we make sure that we're not contrary to one another.
That's funny, because that's what my vision is for upper middle income, mass affluent people, is to create the family office concept, because you can still do it. You don't have to be, uber rich to do it. It can still be done, but you've got to get people, like I always tell people, a business is a team sport. So I try to be the quarterback, but I'll either work with your person or I'll find your person, but you need, it's more than one thing. I don't know everything. Like, so now I'm probably, stop talking, like, what do I need to be doing that I'm not doing to get them ready for you? Right.
So I think, again, it's I always say narrow lanes, aligned narrow lanes make for great super highways.
Yeah.
Right.
Like
and
that.
So if I, stay in my lane, you stay in your lane, but we come together, we are providing a great, amazing service for our folks.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And it's a bunch of different stuff there. It's like, let me ask you, sorry, so this is a personal thing. So I'm an insurance agent. So let's say they don't have a trust yet and they got minor kids. How should I set the beneficiary? And then should I be saying, look, you got kids, you need to talk to so-and-so and get a trust set up? That's really
that's really the answer. Yes.
Okay. That's the answer.
Because so many times I have people say, well, I'm gonna give it to my sister to take care of. Now,
yes, that's kind of stuff I get. Okay.
You hear that all of the time. Now, while your sister may be a good, honest, earnest person, what happens if she dies?
Mm-hmm.
Right. What happens if her spouse sues her, right, for a divorce? That's an asset that's hers.
Mm-hmm.
So we take for granted that we believe what's going to happen, what we need to happen at the time is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
That's not a thing.
Aimee, that's so good. All right, so my head is racing, but I want to respect over your time. But tell them, I guess, a little about your passion. The small business owner that really got you started talking about this. Tell them a little about your firm, the organization, and how they can find you, talk to you, or your firm.
So the easy way, the easy URL for our firm is yourestateplanningattorney.com. That's the easy
Pretty
one.
clear. Yeah.
Right. We have another one that's linked to, our email stuff, but yourestateplanningattorney.com. And so we are, again, focused on the creation, protection, and transfer of wealth. And we operate as a team. We are actually an all women of color firm, right? And we operate as a team because I know that won't always be here. And so I'm beginning with the end in mind, such that you would work with multiple people so that when I'm not here, you still have relationships with other folks. So we are strategically thoughtful about how do we build that out. We're, again, one of our core, our vision is to educate and collaborate, right? And so as such, when we do workshops, we do webinars automatically twice a month. Free, right? So that we make sure that you're educated and you get to know who we are and what we are and why we are, right? And I don't take that lightly. And so we also do tons of we have tons of community events. So if indeed you are interested in hearing from us, you can check out our website, our calendar on our website. And we always have at least 2, but like this month we had 10 presentations throughout the community. And so because one of our core values and our metrics is how many people did we educate? Because even if we don't serve you, we say high tide rises all boats. We want to raise our community in such a way that we are transformational. I think that Curtis and I he mentioned earlier about the conferences. I created this nonprofit called the Association of Black Estate Planning Professionals, which is now, because I am focused on the multi-generational wealth building and bridging the racial wealth gap. It is not for just the lawyers, but it's for financial advisors, insurance people, realtors, because we have to come together to create multi-generational wealth to be transformational. Right. And so we are working collectively to strategically plan and build.
Just remind me that I meant to join and I didn't yet. And because when you're saying that, I got a few people I work with that realtors, some other people. And I when you said that, I was like, okay, this is a collective thing I could bring at least locally to Philly.
Exactly.
And
we don't want to refer to anybody who doesn't support the mission to create multi-generational wealth, right? And
Right.
sometimes we all know people in our professional worlds who are just shady, right?
Right. So unfortunately, right.
Right. And
And
so if we can weed out that way to make sure that the people that we care for in serving are served well.
yeah, it's so funny. Like in the financial world, there's this, and I think it's a stupid rule, but it's the DOL rule. DOL in the financial world, where you got to be a fiduciary, and but you shouldn't have to make a law that says you should do unto others as you have them do unto you. I mean, to me, that's the golden rule. And but apparently you do. But knuckleheads are going to be a knucklehead. I don't care.
That's right.
What law in there. So you've got to start with. There's no such thing as business ethics. There's just ethics, right? There's just, and so you can't be in business long range if you don't put your clients' needs ahead of yours and take good care of them. But unfortunately, that's to me, I still think that's the mean. I think there's some bad actors, but I think most people are basically, if they've been in business a while, they're good people. Although I've seen a few knuckleheads, but not many.
Right. So I think there's also a distinction between good people and the level of competence.
Uh-huh.
Right.
Yeah. That's a good
and
point.
So sometimes people move beyond their capacity.
I've seen a lot of incompetent insurance agents and or financial.
I've seen incompetent attorneys.
Yeah.
Right. Incompetent in that field, that lane. Right. And so I always say that, when you're looking for an estate planning attorney, you don't go to a personal injury attorney.
Right.
You don't go to a divorce attorney for an estate planning attorney. Right.
My wife's an attorney. She says the law is very specialized, right?
It is
and also, like, every county is like a different state, depending on like just here in Philly, she'll practice between Media, Philly, Montgomery County, and each has their own little old boy network, and
right, the law is the same.
Yeah.
The practices are different.
The process and how the court works and how the paperwork works is a little bit different. So it's fascinating. And so you kind of need people that work in different places. So, all right, listen, Aimee, I might have to get you on like once a quarter. We need to, this is we'll talk about this. Like I'll either bring people to your webinar or you can come do a webinar for my folks, right, on this stuff, because I think this is I am so thankful for what you're doing out there, and you have just said so much light on even a subject that was cloudy for me in some areas. I'm always striving to be my biggest fear is giving bad information, and so I try to bring on bigger brains than Curtis on the show.
Well, and that's again, my whole narrow lanes make a super highway, because the stuff I don't know nothing about, and I don't need to know because I know you.
Right, that's right. And so, Aimee, take us home with any few final words of wisdom, and then we'll let these people get on with their day. Any closing thoughts you want them to think about?
Wisdom is the application of knowledge. Right. So often we gather information, don't do anything with it. Right. So if indeed we want to make a difference, we have to take those steps. Don't just sort of land on the information. You don't need to connect up with my firm necessarily, but connect with a firm. Connect with a firm to be transformational for your children's children.
Take action. This is not just, it is for educational and with entertainment, educational purposes, but I want you to take action. Don't just listen to this. Take some notes. We're going to put all of Aimee's stuff in the show notes, and reach out or follow her stuff or check out a webinar. Get yourself educated. And Aimee, thanks again, and y'all go out there and have a great day.